You wouldn't steal a car. You wouldn't steal a TV. You wouldn't steal a meme.
Emotional.
You wouldn't steal another Bitcoiner's wife. But listening to Bugle Weekly without boosting Rod and Richard sats is stealing from journalists. And it's against the law. Support the value for value economy and real journalism by streaming sats to the Bugle on Fountain FM. Available on Android and iOS.
In a world full of shadows where the truth hides, Rod and Dick are the beacons cutting through the lies. With a mic and a typewriter they uncover the schemes, bringing light to the darkness, making superior memes. Bugle Weekly, sound the call. Rod and Dick will catch it all. They do the thinking so you are not misled. Credentials matter, enough said. From the streets to the swoops, they dig deep and they pry. No secret too hidden, no mystery too sly. With courage and grit, they fight for the right. In the battle of words, they're the guiding light. Bugle Weekly, sound the call. Rod and Dick will catch it all. They do the thinking so you are not misled. Credentials matter, enough said. Echoes of the bugle ringing through the night. With every revelation they bring wrongs to light. In a sea of deception they're the island of truth. Rod Palmer and Dick Greaser defending all that's good. Bugle Weekly, sound the call. Rod and Dick will catch it all. They do the thinking so you are not misled. Credentials matter, enough said. So tune in each week to the Bugle's brave cry. Rod and Dick on the case, let the truth never die. But will be defeated, no matter the cost. The Bugle is the compass for society that is lost.
I had Jamie fact-check the Bugle, and he found all their facts were true. Free your mind and let the Bugle do the thinking for you. Life is too damn hard to do the thinking yourself.
Previously on Bugle Weekly, Rod and Richard took a moment to celebrate Bitcoin, which has already won, and to share their vision of the post-dollar future under President Donald Trump. A future where no coiners are vaccinated for Bitcoin derangement syndrome to make the world safe for NGU. Robert Breedlove announced his relationship with adult model Lauren Bundy, which resulted in plebs subscribing to her OnlyFans and studying her content to discover her pornographic past. Meanwhile, Breedlove's baby mama, Janet, announced her allegiance to the controversial meme gang Triple Elite Memes in explosive spaces on Twitter where she shared her and Robert Breedlove's dirty laundry. And finally, Rod and Richard discussed Michael Saylor's blockbuster interview on the What They Gwen Did podcast, where Saylor compared Shinobi to Dr. Fauci.
Are you ready to hear the best damn credentialed journalists in the game? You are listening to the Bugle Weekly, and here are your hosts, Rod Palmer and Richard Greaser.
We are recording Sunday, June 2nd. Happy first or second day of Pride Month. How you doing, Rod?
Really well. It's been a very eventful, very crazy week, both good and bad.
Yeah, I mean, what a way to start out Compliance Month with a bang.
Yeah, and for those of you who might be confused, June is also Compliant Pride Month. Now that is a totally separate observation from Gay Pride. It's just a coincidence, but it's a corporate month to recognize people who, I guess you would now say, exhibit the Bitcoin standard of a commitment to compliance.
Yeah. So, I mean, the listener might be thinking right now, why should we recognize this holiday? It's just another holiday that we don't want to recognize. You know, you may be joining us in the compliance strike that is sweeping the nation, and you don't want to recognize Compliance Pride Month, but it's important to know where these types of holidays came from. And essentially what happened is all the HR departments of the major Bitcoin companies, starting with Anchor Watch, banded together to make this recognized as a holiday.
Right. And due to some of our contractual obligations to Podcom, and their sponsorship of this podcast, we are obligated to provide a few profiles, and we'll be sharing those throughout the month. Profiles in compliance and recognizing companies and apps and developers in the Bitcoin space who have demonstrated, like we said, Bitcoin standard of compliance.
I wonder if we should do a bracket with people to vote on for what is the most compliant Bitcoin company.
Yeah, that would be a really good one, I think. But let the customers and the users, let them weigh in and show who they're rooting for in this race to a more compliant tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, I think like a lot of the marketing departments really, were excited about the influencer bracket that we did in March. And I think a compliance bracket in June would be very popular with the HR departments and compliance departments of these companies.
Everything was about the influencers, the attractive, suave, charismatic, like the speakers at conferences, people who are good guests on podcasts. But there's a lot of real sides of the earth, human beings working very hard at compliant Bitcoin companies in the HR departments. They don't get in front of the cameras. They don't get in front of the microphones, but it's really June is their month. And then the real twist of irony, I mean, it could have only been more ironic if it actually occurred in June. But then Donald Trump becomes the first convicted non-compliant president, the first convicted non-compliant presidential candidate. People doubted his authentic, if he really supported Bitcoin. He comes out, proves it by becoming non-compliant, joining the non-compliant strike. This week, it was huge news. It was really stunning.
Yeah, and I don't think the nation knows how to handle a former president being this non-compliant. Like, what does that mean for everybody that's out there trying to comply? So there's these two powerful forces working against each other. There's the HR and compliance departments of all the Bitcoin companies pushing to promote compliance pride in June. And then there's the former president of the U.S., who's now apparently a Bitcoiner, joining the compliance strike with all the non-compliant Bitcoiners.
I think one of the things that Donald Trump really did well, whether it was intentional or not, was function as a symbol for the hypocrisy of like the corruption of the government, the non-compliance of the government. The government obviously themselves does not comply. But when he does it, when he stops complying, it shows them what they're doing. It just really gets under their skin. It really gets at a nerve. And I think he is now demonstrating, he saw the value of the compliance strike, and he wanted to be that ultimate symbol that really everybody could recognize.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, like maybe he's the next Bitcoin martyr, if you know what I mean.
Right. I mean, maybe his solution to fundraising is to get arrested and go to jail like the samurai guys. He saw how much their influence and their profile boosted when they got arrested, and he wanted it on that action.
Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of incredible looking at the timing of his conviction. If anybody was not following the news this week, Donald Trump was convicted for participating in a non-KYC transaction.
Right. Exactly.
Wait.
A peer-to-peer transaction. He didn't report it to the IRS.
Yeah, or if he reported it, he didn't report it accurately, is what he was convicted of. And so...
Right.
I mean, that's a pretty big precedent to set. But I think the reality is, he's an individual that has always tried to comply. He spends a lot of money in compliance fees to make sure that he's compliant. and they still got him for non-compliance, even though he was doing, a pretty good job of following the rules, for the most part. And
Yeah, he made a non-KYC transaction and paid an extra fee, like he would pay an extra fee to a Bitcoin miner to have priority or extra security on your transaction. He paid an extra fee to his counterparty in the transaction so that they would keep their transaction private. And he got busted. He was trying to do a coin join to make his transaction extra private. And now he's got 34 felonies.
Yeah. I mean, this makes what's happening to the Samurai wallet developers very, very important, because he was using their product to send non-KYC transactions
Right.
peer-to-peer.
The general public still, because they don't know that Bitcoin has already won, they don't understand what a coin join even is. But they do understand hush money. That's exactly the same thing. So if you can start to expose how the government is now starting to make hush money illegal, you'll understand and have more sympathy for Bitcoiners.
Yeah. Yeah, and the problem here, which is what we've been trying to drive in, the reason why compliance doesn't work is because the people we would be complying with are non-compliant themselves. And so the CIA is still doing non-KYC transactions. They're probably using tools like Join Market to obfuscate the history behind them and do kind of a collective spend, mixing the coins around and confusing the analytics companies. Like, they're still operating using a non-KYC standard, but they want everybody else to KYC.
Exactly. It's not symmetric privacy. Wasabi, they saw the non-compliance of the government. They said, we're done. We're not doing with this until the government complies as well. So Wasabi was joining the compliance strike. And the CIA somehow convinced them to come back and to come back to the fold and allow them to use these non-KYC hash money payments. And I don't know what's going to happen. There's developments are happening too quickly, and it's hard to know what is safe and what is not.
What a lot of this comes down to, it just comes down to, public perception. And that's why it's so important that credentialed journalists control the narrative. And, we'll talk about that more later, but there was a big victory for our, just for our optics, for our side here, which is the side of, fairness. It's the side of holding elected officials that are non-compliant accountable. And it's the side of promoting Bitcoin and NGU in an ethical way. And that big thing that has really given us a boost is that Andrew Tate has joined the compliance strike. So we have one of the world's biggest influencers.
Yeah. And if you followed Andrew Tate on social media, you would see over the past few days, he has been tweeting extremely non-compliant tweets, and he's been promoting it. I think roughly translated, because I forget the tweet word for word, said, "It is impossible to be depressed if you're not compliant. Try it." It's been very provocative. He said a few other things, but he basically said that one of the things he admired about Trump is that he doesn't give a fuck about compliance.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I admire that about Trump as well. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this election cycle goes. He did say that he was going to have and manage, he's going to have his own prison built. I wrote an article about this week. Very, very similar to what Pablo Escobar did in the late 1980s when he was arrested. He built his own prison and operated it. And so Trump is wanting to convert Mar-a-Lago into a prison where he can run his campaign from.
Interesting.
And I think it's going to be a very non-compliant prison. Apparently there's going to be a McDonald's inside the prison, a 24-hour McDonald's. And I wonder if he's going to, have influencers like Andrew Tate join him in his prison and work on his campaign with him, and also
Well,
promote this non-compliance strike.
I wouldn't be surprised. One thing that I would be paying attention to is if McDonald's in the Mar-a-Lago prison that Trump is confined to, they serve breakfast after 10:30 a.m. That would be biggest indication of the amount of compliance taking place inside that prison.
Yeah. We definitely need to hear the details on it. We need to hear if there's a dollar menu at this McDonald's. Lot to be revealed, that's for sure.
I wonder if Donald Trump will be able to spend his custodial lightning sats that plebs are sending him on that prison.
Did he set up a geyser fund, or are you talking about his campaign funds?
His campaign that David Daley is set him up with lightning payment acceptance.
Yeah, I mean, they started out using Coinbase, right? Coinbase
Yeah, I think
Commerce.
so. Right, exactly.
So,
Just, of course, integrated a very compliant lightning node themselves.
I heard rumors that Trump is actually heavily considering moving over to BTC Pay Server instead of Coinbase Commerce to be non-compliant.
Well, I saw something about that on Stacker News.
Imagine the very first presidential campaign funded by non-compliant money. Because at a certain point, it just doesn't matter anymore. Because he's already been convicted of non-compliance, so what is, 1 or 2 or 5 or 20 more convictions when he's already going to prison in Mar-a-Lago, and, he still can run for president, I think, kind of regardless of his other non-compliant behavior.
It would be bold because not a single U.S. election has ever been funded by anything except the most compliant money, most compliant transaction. So it will be a very bold, unproven attempt, an unproven strategy to try to win an election with non-compliant money.
Well, there's a veneer of compliance, and Sam Bankman-Fried, really showed us this, that, he was laundering money from Ukraine into political campaigns, which, might have been, if done properly and declared properly, might have been,
yeah, so I get what you're saying. So but that's true.
Yeah.
The money that funds U.S. elections is always clean because it's been laundered. And if you launder money, it becomes clean. Okay, that makes sense. So he's going to skip and you think about it, laundering money costs money. It's part of the game. You have to pay a high fee, a high tax. You have to take losses on, the face value. But with Bitcoin, with lightning payments, there's none of that. You can just take 100%. There's no laundering fee. So I guess the CIA is going to be pretty disappointed to not collect that laundering fee. But, that's how you start deep state.
Yeah. Yeah, we just have to, route around all the obstacles that they put in our way. And one of the quickest ways is to just break through their barriers by being non-compliant, because they have the belief that they've trained us to be compliant to the point where, even when things get bad and difficult and compliance becomes more dangerous than non-compliance, they expect us to just sit here like sheep. And the reality is that there's a spiritual awakening happening, which is largely led by the lobbyists like Dennis Porter and David Bailey, who have done the work to orange pill Trump and orange pill all these other politicians, together hand in hand, setting the example. And because if the politicians were not orange pilled and they weren't able to see why government compliance was so problematic, there would be no hope for the future as far as changing things through the system. But because all this groundwork is being laid, and, probably the next elected president is going to be a Bitcoiner, it's a pretty big deal. And so we're really going to be able to shift things towards the direction of freedom by the short stint of non-compliance. And all right, we just had technical difficulties, but now we're back. You back, Rob?
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry about that one. We were just talking about how non-compliant Donald Trump is, and Andrew Tate joined the compliance strike. And I did want to move on talked to another guy who's pretty non-compliant. I'm talking about Dave Smith, a comedian, libertarian. He was a candidate for libertarian president until he dropped out. Did he either get a debate or an interview? I didn't see it, but Richard, what was the takeaway from his conversation with former CNN pundit Chris Cuomo?
Yeah, so Dave Smith and Chris Cuomo debated on the lockdowns during the pandemic. It was a non-credentialed podcaster debating a credentialed journalist, so it went just about how everybody could expect, from what I could tell.
Was it as good as the Ungovernable Misfits when you interviewed them? I mean, that was a little bit hard to listen to at times because they just didn't know what they were talking about, but otherwise, kicky guests.
Yeah, I mean, Dave did a pretty good job for being non-credentialed, so I don't want to hit him as hard on any of the information that he presented. He just didn't present it authoritatively because he couldn't, and so that was really limiting to him. So I can't imagine what his career would look like if he went back to school and got a bachelor's degree in journalism. But yeah, I mean, Chris Cuomo, he kind of set himself up for failure because, he was the master of promoting compliance during the pandemic, and now he's retracting a lot of those positions and is moving to the direction of non-compliance. And it's kind of strange, to witness it and watch his shift. He was calling for a 9/11 light commission to review all the decisions made during the pandemic, to kind of, review everybody's behavior in it and essentially prove nothing in a commission. That was kind of his point that he wanted to make in the debate, and kind of run cover for a lot of individuals that, took the credentialed information, but, just implemented it poorly, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I didn't see this one in full yet, but I have seen some of the other podcast tour interviews that Chris Cuomo has been doing. And my take is spook until proven otherwise. I think he saw what Tucker Carlson was doing in his sudden switch to total non-compliance, and how many friends and influencers he's built and gained along the way, and how much money he's making on this new endeavor. And so Chris Cuomo is trying to be like, hey, I'm non-compliant too, but he's got to do some work to prove it to us. I think Tucker let us down by he took us in the shitcoin of nicotine. But other than that, he seems to be well received. Even got invited to Russia to talk to non-compliant Vladimir Putin. But I think Chris Cuomo is a little too derivative. It's a little too obvious. He has to do more to prove to us that he's going to be non-compliant and that he's committed to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people, now that non-compliance is the trend in town, there's a lot of people trying to jump on the bandwagon, and there's a lot of potential for stolen valor to happen here that I'm concerned about.
We need to have our eyes peeled, be on the lookout extra hard for stolen non-compliant valor. It's going to need Donald Trump. He's going to inspire a lot of politicians to try to seem non-compliant to be popular. And it's going to also bleed into influencers and then even journalists.
Yeah, I mean, I have to warn the audience, here pretty soon we could see New York Times columnists essentially promoting non-compliance. And, when the CIA is on board with the narrative, you should be concerned.
Yeah, don't take anything at face value. If they suddenly flip the script and they backpedal everything and they're like, actually, we think non-compliance is good. It needs to be protected. You need to have a bill of rights for non-compliance. Be very, very skeptical when you see that coming from credentialed voices.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just we need sufficient purity tests is what we need to ensure the community doesn't get taken advantage of.
Yeah, non-compliance it requires proof of work. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, do you think, I don't think every individual is born with the courage to be non-compliant in the way that we're proposing on the show. So I wonder if there's a way to, genetically test using something like Ancestry.com to see if people have compliant genes or not, and that's using gene sequencing tools that have advanced pretty frequently or pretty rapidly over the last few years. Could we determine are people actually non-compliant or not with a simple blood test?
On the opposite side of that question, what if you could use a blood test or a DNA sequencing test to find out how compliant somebody was, and then use that, make like a QR code of your gene sequencing, and just be able to share that and be, boom, nope, that's my KYC, I'm compliant. Let me buy Bitcoin.
Yeah. I mean, if it was good enough for Elizabeth Warren to realize that she was a Native American, it should be good enough for us to determine whether somebody's compliant or not.
100%. I think that is something that the core devs should be working on right now. Add that to on-chain identity.
Man, Bitcoin development. I mean,
what a mess.
Is that primarily a topic that's discussed in Twitter Spaces? Is that where all the core devs are hanging out, talking about the future of Bitcoin?
Sometimes. But I think one thing people, at least I've tried to raise awareness for it. I don't know how many other people are starting to think about it. If you look at the core dev, the mess that it is in Bitcoin Core, it's that many of these core devs do not have computer science degrees. They do not have the training and credentials to be thinking about the game theory and the first principles of what they're working on. And it's starting to show. And I think people are starting to say, we are tired of the LARPs. We need credentialed leadership to get us through this plateau.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time where in the world of technology, you could be successful without credentials. But today, especially, as everybody's using programming tools like Copilot to do all the work for them, people need to find ways to set themselves as different from the competition. And having a bachelor's degree, like this should be one of the primary considerations when you're looking at whether there's merit to a pull request on Bitcoin Core. Is the person submitting it college educated?
Yeah. This was primarily a consequence of fiat. Because of fiat, you did not need credentials. You did not need to have that proof of work, the bachelor's degree, to demonstrate your qualifications to earn your wisdom and expertise and your authority. But now that Bitcoin has already won, that proof of work is becoming more and more embedded in people's minds and required for them to respect the information, the request, the proposal to update Bitcoin. It's like, have you done the proof of work to get a bachelor's degree in computer science for me to even listen to you?
Yeah, I mean, that's really good. I mean, when we're talking about fiat, it means by decree. And essentially what's been happening is people have been decreeing that people are competent just because they have good ideas and not because they're properly credentialed.
Or how many Twitter followers they have.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, do people really want the future of Bitcoin to be dependent on how many Twitter followers somebody has, a developer has?
Those can be faked. Those can be faked. You can fake engagement. You can't fake a bachelor's degree.
I mean, we've talked a lot about pseudo spoofing on the show.
Right.
And that's something, we're launching is essentially a pseudo spoofing defense, or what I like to call a civil defense, to protect, people. And we just need to promote this idea that, credentials matter in every industry. I mean, is there a single industry that it doesn't matter? I mean, like, how many industries require proper, permits and certifications to do things because not having them is dangerous? And when we're talking about
fishing, you need credentials to go fishing.
I mean, that's an important one. I mean, we wouldn't have any fish without credentialed fishing.
Right. You have to understand the sanctity of what you're doing. You can't just be, why, I'm non-compliant, I should be able to open a pull request. That's not how it works.
Yeah, I mean, are you familiar with the story that Safedine uses early on, talking about the fisherman saving up his income to build a net instead of working, and how it lets him catch more fish?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. It's a little hard to understand, I guess, from my perspective. Maybe we just come from different cultures.
Well, I mean, if you imagine, like, nobody would understand that reference if there weren't permits required to be able to fish, because then there wouldn't be any fish. So an important step, it's one of the earliest points of orange pilling that's done in that book. And that wouldn't be relevant to 99% of listeners if it wasn't for those fishing permits.
Right. There's an old saying, it says, similar to Safedines, it says, if a man is hungry and you give him a fish, he'll eat for a day. But if you teach a man to fish, and he can feed himself. But that right there, what people overlook, is when he says, when you teach a man to fish, that is a licensing protocol. That is what they're talking about. They're talking about making sure people understand what they're doing.
Yeah, I think if I were to modernize that saying, it would be, give a man a fat fish, he's not hungry for a day. Give a man, or teach a man to fish, he's not hungry for the rest of his life. Teach a man to respect proper permits and requirements to be able to fish, and you can feed the whole world.
Let a man earn a bachelor's degree in fishing, and he will be able to feed the world. And that's metaphoric. That's like journalists. Teach a man to be a journalist, and he will feed the world real, hard-hitting news. And that will enable the world to help us create NGU and usher in hyper-Bitcoinization.
Well, very, very, very exciting times. I mean, the debate between Cuomo and Smith was very interesting. I would encourage people to watch it, you know, and to really ask themselves, like, what type of purity test should we put people to as they try to defect to the winning side, which is the non-compliant. Well, there was a big thing that happened in Congress this week where Joe Biden, you know, another non-compliant president, vetoed a big crypto bill that would have allowed regulated institutions to custody Bitcoin. You think that is a signal that the compliance strike is winning? Is that Biden is vetoing the bill?
I think so, because one thing that Bitcoin now allows you to do, especially with being able to put stable coins on Lightning, is to become your own central bank. And we already have a central bank in the United States. So if all these banks, other banks, non-central banks, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, if they could custody Bitcoin and run their own nodes, they would become central banks themselves. We have too many central banks. You can't have that many central banks. That's very non-compliant. So the government is now learning that they cannot continue this path of non-compliance, because if we go non-compliant, everything falls apart.
It's a faith-based system, and people need to have faith that complying is the proper thing to do.
Right. If they lose faith in the system, then everything falls apart. It looked like he was going to actually pass this bill because Congress was very adamant. It was bipartisan. And at the last second, at the 11th hour of the compliance strike month of May, he succeeded.
That was a pretty big deal. Well, you know, our success came at the detriment of Dennis Porter, unfortunately.
Yeah, I read a rumor that President Biden gave Dennis Porter his word in the Oval Office the day before that he would not veto it. But then he ended up throwing Dennis under the bus and lying to him, betraying Dennis.
I don't know how Dennis is handling it. I'm sure he's letting it kind of roll off. I imagine that, you know, doing in his line of work, he deals with a lot of dubious people. that don't put the value on truth like us as journalists do. Unfortunately, most politicians don't.
I think Dennis is probably used to this type of wishy-washy behavior from politicians, because you have to think about how many politicians promised that they would take a selfie with him. Then when he got to them, like maybe in the DMs or over email, but then when he got to their offices in person, they would not talk to him and they would not give him a selfie.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for that selfie of Dennis and AOC that he's been promising everybody on Twitter.
Yeah, he was saying he was going to let people pay for a copy, the uncensored version, whatever that means. But he promised Dennis, so yeah.
I would. How many sats would you pay for a picture of Dennis Porter in the act of orange pilling AOC?
Oh, I would love to see that. I think that I would probably pay 1 million sats for a picture or a video even of Dennis Porter orange pilling AOC, and AOC's husband is in the room watching his wife be orange pilled by another man.
You'd say 1 million? I'd probably pay 10 million sats for that. That would be a pretty epic video.
If that's a video, it was out there, I would empty my cold storage.
Yeah, I mean, because that's a pretty pivotal moment in American politics. Right there is Dennis Porter convincing one of the leaders behind the Green New Deal of the merits of Bitcoin.
If you want to orange pill somebody, especially a married woman, got to be a bull. That's what they need. They need bulls. We're bulls for NGU.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, nobody likes bears anyways.
For some reason in the month of June, I just remember how much I hate bears. I think it's probably because some of them stole my picnic basket when I went camping with my mom and dad when I was a kid, but I just really hate bears.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're not fun, when you're in a bear market, everybody's like fighting each other. I mean, that's been one of the most interesting. So, Yellow early on in the bear market, he said the bear market's about, doing a few things. It's about fighting with each other. It's about building. It's about stacking. And so, so many people have been fighting that they've decided to become martial artists and train. And I'm not sure if this has been inspired by Andrew Tate, who used to be a kickboxer, or where this came from, but like individuals like Nick Carter, are full blown, trying to fight people. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's becoming a violent community. There's just a lot of self-hate in the bear market, and the people who, if you don't realize Bitcoin has already won, you're still in this bear mentality. It's extremely gay.
Yeah. Well, I know I don't want to get too sidetracked because this was not on the agenda to talk about today, but there was this conference in Austin this week. And at the conference they had like an influencer fight event. And I didn't watch it, but I did hear that Dennis Porter wanted to compete in it, but they actually banned him because they considered him too much of a professional and they wanted to, focus more on amateur influencers like Nick Carter.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I remember Nick Carter was trying to get involved with some green energy mining council thing to warm up to politicians a few years ago. And he's not even in that conversation anymore. I mean, if you're talking about ESG and green energy and green mining, Dennis Porter is leading the charge. He took that space over because it was probably intimidated.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Dennis is orange pilling former presidents, sitting Congress people, with David Bailey. He's crossing, David Bailey doesn't have the ability to cross party lines like Dennis does. Dennis is friends with everyone in Congress. And
yeah, right now, Dennis is Batman and David Bailey is like his Robin.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair characterization, to say the least. But yeah, the conference is called Consensus, and it was all about compliance. Like they had it to really start off Compliance Pride Month. They were talking about, ways to compliantly launch stock markets on, different blockchains, very, very revolutionary stuff if you were in the year 2017. So it's kind of like where the boomers go to hang out in the space and talk about old ideas that nobody really cares about anymore. But it seemed like a pretty good event.
Interesting. Well, conference season is just warming up, and the podcast, activities have been really heating up, getting ready for the conference, and then let's talk about heating up. The podcast event for President Bukele in El Salvador this weekend. I think it was yesterday. Bill LeClaire, the guy, Max Kaiser, Jack Mallers, Mike Germano, Donald Trump Jr., Tucker Carlson, Matt Gaetz, the who's who podcast. We're in El Salvador for this really, they had a military flyover. It was a blockbuster event.
Yeah. I mean, go into it a little bit more. What do you know? What was going on?
Yeah, the President Bukele, it was his inauguration. So he won his third term, or his second term, as president of El Salvador for his ability to bring compliance and safety to that country and to NGU to that country. So they had the inauguration, even though I think the election was several months ago. But if you look in the crowd, it was 50% El Salvador and 50%, podcasters or influencers. It was a great turnout. American politicians, especially the ones on podcasts, they were all there.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, we need more politicians to become podcasters and to go promote events like that because, America has a lot to learn from El Salvador and what Bukele has done.
Yeah, he's built some beautiful prisons for non-compliance. He's let people to pay their taxes in Bitcoin. It's really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, why live in America when you can live in El Salvador at this point? Like, the real only hope is for Donald Trump, really, really take the orange pill and come in and turn America into El Salvador. I think that's what gets me excited right now.
Yeah, that a lot of people are asking themselves, why would I live in a place like New York or Chicago or Los Angeles, San Francisco, when I could live in San Salvador, a safe, compliant country? The United States has a lot to learn from that small orange-pilled nation.
Yeah. And the reason why is, when you live on a Bitcoin standard, you just instantly become a good person.
Right.
And I think this is probably a good segment. I'm going to play a clip about the spiritual awakening that's happening as a result of Bitcoin lobbyists.
Today we stand at the precipice of a much-needed spiritual revival. Bitcoin has already won, but many of the politicians have yet to realize it. Bitcoin lobbyists are leading the charge by orange-pilling our political leaders, purifying their hearts of the blemishes resulting from decades of fiat politics. Bitcoin is truth that can set one free. No matter the crimes committed, Bitcoin has the power to redeem even the sickest hearts. Our lobbyists, who work so diligently to protect us, as well as ensure that we have permission to use Bitcoin, are congregating on the nation's capital to meet with pedophiles, war criminals, and thieves. They do not see these people as evil, but sick and recoverable. They see past the politicians' actions into their hearts, believing that they can lead them to a better way. Lobbyists are truly the spiritual leaders of this spiritual revival in our nation, promoting compliance as a tactic to truly be defiant. We must support our spiritual leaders on their path of leading this awakening, for if we don't, we may be catapulted into an age of darkness. Remember that this battle is not a kinetic battle for territory and legislation, but is a deeper battle. It is a battle for hearts and minds, for optics and souls. By liking and sharing their tweets, and diverting your DCA into funding their efforts, you are protecting our bright orange future. We cannot sit around waiting for permission to win, and instead need to proactively go seek their permission. Many are afraid to comply right now because of government non-compliance. Donald Trump was convicted of performing a non-KYC transaction. The samurai devs are being held in prison without the proper legal processes being followed. Ross Ulbricht is facing an eternity in prison without parole. You may be thinking that compliance will not save you, but have hope. Our lobbyists representing us will prevail because they have truth and immutable blockchain on their side. The power of Satoshi will prevail, and humanity will be propelled into a time of unprecedented hope and prosperity. Don your laser eyes proudly as with lobbyists, we watch game theory play out. We will win only if you do your part. Choose hope, choose wealth, and choose victory.
That's a really great clip. That gets me really, really hyped about moral, spiritual soul, or the future of America's soul.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the future is hopeful, and it's really important during times like this, when there's a lot of psyops going on and people trying to make you comply, to just remember there's hope. There's other forces at work that are not right in front of your face, that are working for your own good. And you have to trust the plan, essentially.
Yeah, trust the process and trust that if you have family member, a friend, somebody close to you, just morally, spiritually, they are sick, sending them some lightning sats is all it might take to completely heal their soul.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many good people out there, really, really sitting down with some of the sickest people in our society in Washington and working on changing their hearts, through using the blockchain. Maybe they would be willing, maybe you could contact some of the people at the Bitcoin Policy Institute to come talk to your sick relatives. Maybe you have a little kid that likes to, torture the family dog and light things on fire and, bring dead birds in the house. And maybe that little kid, just needs to be introduced to Satoshi and Bitcoin, to kind of get that behavior in order.
Right. Or even worse, you could have a cousin who uses Monero and you could orange pill him. That would be, you turn his life around.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that would be a bigger, massive shift. Well, let's go through some of the headlines real quick of the week. You talked a little bit about the El Salvador influencers. I know you were posting about that on Twitter. I suggested that we quarantine the non-compliant in Washington, D.C. I'm not sure if you got a chance to read that article, Rod.
I mean, would be a very successful strategy, in my opinion. It worked, more or less. It worked a couple of years ago. And I think that now we have the blueprint. And now we know what the weakness spots are in policies like this. We could really nail it this time and use this quarantine to squash the non-compliant that bell curve of people who just, some people on the left get it, some people on the right get it, but the people in the middle, the non-compliant government officials, just smash that down, get rid of that nitwit desire they have to think that they're better than everybody else and can just break the rules at their own leisure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it would be a good way to teach them. It'd be a good way to just generally stop the spread of non-compliance in Washington, D.C., which is at pandemic levels. And so essentially what I'm proposing is we get, this general metropolitan area around Washington, D.C., where all the politicians and all the intelligence operators live, and build 100-foot wall, concrete wall around, which would have the dual purpose later, would start to keep them in. But in the future, once they're converted to being compliant again, it will be used to keep the non-compliant out. But we could, really lock things down. I think about 2 weeks of them, reflecting on their behavior will be enough for them to change, and we will not have to extend the quarantine. Again, this brings to the question, what type of testing we can put in place to determine whether they're non-compliant or compliant again.
Right, and And this might all be solved if Trump can get the vaccine for Bitcoin derangement syndrome, which cures non-compliance.
Yeah. Yeah. And, hopefully he'll be able to do that, within the 2-week time period. And this won't be extended for a period of years.
Maybe Operation Light Speed becomes Operation Lightning Speed, which is the fastest type of transaction.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that'd be a good name for it. Maybe this is, if we're going to name the operation, maybe this is a good one to pitch to the Bitcoin company HR departments and get their opinions.
Right. Mutiny of the non-compliant.
Trying to think of any other headlines, that
we did see the one. There was some cypherpunks developed cutting edge technology. They can create mini spotlights and they can use that to project logos of their company, of their podcast onto the blonde spot on BTC Sessions hair, as well as Nico from Simply Bitcoin. They can leverage that for guerrilla marketing. So now if you are a Bitcoin startup that doesn't have the funds to buy an expensive booth at the expo hall or to sponsor like a conference, you can now get your logo on the main stage if you can use this mini spotlight technology. That's pretty interesting. It's something to follow.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I think it solves a lot of challenges. It'd be interesting to hear more about what the cost for a product like this is. But one of the challenges that is being presented to these companies that are, startups that are trying to bootstrap things without taking a bunch of VC money is that they still have to pay the ticket price to get into the event unless they sneak in, which is, I think most companies, they can't afford conference tickets unless they have VC money.
That's a good point. And there needs to be open source. This can't be one of those technologies that gets captured by the big companies, big VC-backed companies to just spread their logos around. I mean, I know ET Sessions is being chased around by PodConf, interested sponsors all the time. Imagine if they get their hands on this mini spotlight, even the last bastion of marketing space will be eaten up by the VCs once again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is about democratizing conference advertisement. I mean, this really has a huge potential to undermine PodConf in general. And so I'm pretty excited about it. Maybe we should look at investing in one of these ourselves.
Yeah, if anybody knows, has an insight on like a beta test for this mini spotlight, please hit us up. Yeah, let us know. Love to get all, especially by July for the conference.
Yeah. I mean, we can get tickets to most of these conferences because they give it to us for our press credentials. They want us to be at the conference covering it. But if anybody has BTC Sessions travel schedule for the PodConf tour, as well as Nico, please DM me their itineraries so that we can know where to be with this the spotlight to take advantage of it. And if you're a company also wanting to do this, we can, split up the talks because they're on a lot of panels. They do a lot of moderating. So I'm sure that, we could talk and come to an agreement where we're not trying to compete with shining our logos on him at the same time.
Yeah, that's good. We don't want congestion in that matter. And also, if somebody can figure out how put a comment in like a YouTube video during a live stream, how that would maybe potentially shine up into Nico's hair when he's doing Simply Bitcoin. That might be a really valuable decentralized technology.
Well, I bet, if Nico, this might be a way to get him using more like value for value products, because we could have Ellen Bits develop a plugin, like a streamer plugin that lets you pay with Lightning.
Right.
And broadcast a message, and that message gets broadcasted to Nico's blonde streak using a spotlight in studio while he's recording.
That would be huge. And take the technology that people use to send sats to like make a porn star's vibrator buzz and use that for something productive, like actually advertising your podcast in Nico's hair.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be really cool. I can imagine him being on board with that. I can see Ellen Bits developing that. If they're not willing to do it, I'm sure there's some Lightning devs that we could talk to in order to make it. But this could be a pretty big product. I think, I want to coin a name for it before anybody else gets around to it. I would like to call this an ultra chat instead of a super chat.
I like it.
Well, that's some good reporting you did on that story. It was definitely one that no other media company was willing to touch or cover. Really, some might say that's getting into the weeds, but I think these are the important topics that we cover that sets us apart as different from all the other noise on the industry. Yeah, I mean, I think that wraps up the headlines that I wanted to cover. I mean, Elon Musk was trying to get Donald Trump to support Dogecoin instead of Bitcoin. That's going to be an interesting one to follow. And then Ginger B. Stiffen did a great long story on Biden vetoing the SAB 121, that whole crypto bill. But yeah, should we get to the boost?
Let's do it.
You start out with the first one.
Pull that one back up. All right, we got the episode for vaccinating Bitcoin derangement syndrome, episode 10. First boost I got here is from John from Ungovernable Misfits. He said, used to give us 69,420 sat. Credential lives matter. I could not agree more. Sometimes it feels like we're the only lives that don't matter to people. But it's good to hear people, honest listeners, support with messages like that.
Definitely. Yeah, thanks for the boost, John. I really appreciate it. And thanks for recognizing the importance of our credentials. It goes a long way. I would highly suggest that everybody that hasn't yet checked out the Ungovernable Misfits show on Fountain, go check it out and give them a boost as well. There's some good guys over there.
Absolutely.
Doing the hard work. I mean, they're the tip of the spear with the non-compliance strike.
Absolutely. The next one was from me, so we could skip that one.
Well, thanks for boosting the show. I'll read it. You said make vaccines safe and effective again. And I think that's a great boost. And it's exciting to see that, mental health issues like Bitcoin derangement syndrome can be vaccinated.
And then next one we've got Spakatoshi. He boosted 10,000 sats. As the number continues to go up, I find myself wanting an OnlyFans girlfriend like my hero, Bobby Breedlove. However, right now there's no transparent way for me to view and verify their meta history, including STD tests. Can blockchain fix this? That's a really good question. There's a lot of ways you could do it. You can go the shitcoin way, you can go the Bitcoin way. This decentralized identity could easily include sexual history and STD tests, but you could also use the testing for compliance, the gene sequencing, to probably find out what some of that history is.
Yeah. That's, I think it'd be good to have your STD status tied to the Bitcoin blockchain. And so when you go into the doctor and get tested, essentially anybody can verify, whether you're clean or not and when your most recent test is. It's kind of like just a proof of identity type function, proof of status, proof of, I think it's a really good idea. I think blockchain does fix this.
Blockchain fixes everything.
Yeah.
Figuring out how to do this, maybe like sending your credentials over a Lightning transaction, kind of like the idea of like identity, logging into a company or logging into a website with Lightning, logging into a relationship with Lightning. Just send a transaction and boom, it says all of the things they're clear from.
Man, why is Sailor taking so long to develop this problem? What an asshole. The next one is from Fundamentals from the Rock Paper Bitcoin podcast for 10,000 sats. And Fundamentals says, good shit all around. Thanks, man. Business Cat and Fundamentals did a good show the other day over on the Rock Paper Bitcoin podcast that trended pretty well on the Fountain charts. So definitely take a chance to go check that out. Appreciate the boost.
And then next we got We All Eat. Wasted 5,000 sats. Blow your fucking horn for the Bugle. At first I thought that was going to be a mean one, but it sounds like it's just a bugling for support. Thank you. We All Eat.
Yeah, that guy, if you don't know who he is, he's a cool dude. Appreciate the boost. Appreciate the support. The next boost was from Enoch, who said, "My bad last week. I was confused. This is high signal. Excellent episode. Thank you." So yeah, I don't know if you remember, but in the boost last week, Enoch responded by saying that we were spewing a bunch of Marxist nonsense. And I kind of roasted Enoch for leveling, just baseless accusations at us and not respecting all the value that we're bringing to Enoch by doing the thinking for them. And it seems like Enoch, understood and flipped around their opinion and is on the correct train of supporting the Bugle now.
Nice. The next one comes from, I got the next two, same person, LFD McCombs. He's pretty active. He likes to talk to us on Twitter. His first is just for 1,000 sats. It says signal. Couldn't agree more. Second one for 500 sats. Warning spaces, Bitcoin price index. Necessary. I'm behind you. Thanks, Philip. You've been a great supporter. That support, continued support.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. Appreciate it. And the next one, or the last one, is from Lincoln Park Rules or just comment. Wait, you can comment without boosting?
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, apparently the super shadowy hacker over here, supercoder, figured out how to get in our boost section without commenting or without boosting us.
I think he's just replying to a clip, and it's putting it in the feed for the episode.
Huh. Well, that's pretty weird.
You shouldn't be able to reply to a clip without setting money.
Found it, guys. Better get your spam filters up because we got Lincoln Park Rules spamming us. I mean, we played a clip at the beginning talking about how if you listen to the episode without boosting us, that's essentially theft of journalism. So what would commenting without boosting be in relevance to that?
Yeah, if you enjoyed a clip, you have to pay for it.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I'll give Lincoln Park Rules a pass on this one because he's a good guy and boosted my dollar menu episode that I put out last week. So he gets a pass there.
Yeah, the good intent was there.
Yeah. That wraps it up for the show today, I think. You got any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, I think my advice would just be to be wary of those who speak non-compliantly but do not walk the walk.
Yeah, I mean this sounds like the proper job for Bitcoin Twitter to handle because they're very proficient in conducting purity tests to determine whether somebody actually has the spirit of Satoshi working in them or not.
Make sure to sniff those out. Don't trust, verify.
Yeah. Unless they're credentialed journalists like us.
Exactly.
Well, anyways, thanks for tuning in to the show, and we'll see you guys next week.
You have just finished listening to this week's episode of the Bugle Weekly. Thanks for letting us do the thinking for you. The compliance strike is winning, and Bitcoin has won. Make sure to take the time to celebrate and smell the roses. We have officially entered the suddenly phase. Thank you for boosting the show and helping us dominate the fountain charts. It shows Bitcoiners that credentials matter, and the Bugle is the best in the game. Your support is helping us to do the thinking, not only for you, but also the podcast pirates who choose to not boost the show. You wouldn't steal a Kia, so why would you steal journalism? Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you on next week's episode of the Bugle Weekly.